Welcome, everyone, to the Entertainment Buffet podcast for the 100th time. I am one of your hosts, BrandonProsek, and with me is longtime guest, good friend of the show, Josh Sibley. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. But if there's anyone, since Jess unfortunately couldn't be a part of this episode, I was like, you know what? I'm very curious what Josh's underrated movies would be for this topic. So, yeah, let's real quick before we get started, Josh, on the topic. You want to share with everyone like what you've been up to, places they can catch you?
Yeah, I've been up to making movies and doing movie reviews, and I mean, the usual. You can find Instant Movie Reviews, which is my review show that I am a host and producer on Instagram, Facebook, and I think we have a Twitter, Instant Movie Review. We're working on a website, but you can find us there. You can find my personal information. Just everything's J. Scott Sibley, just a letter and that. So check out, and also check out Deft Pictures, because that's my production company, and where we have some. I actually just finished a rough cut of our new film last night, so hoping to have that out in the next couple months here. So that'll be exciting.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, it's been a little while since we've had an episode, everyone. I apologize for the hiatus, but I'm still going to be dropping some mini episodes here and there. And like Josh, I'm going to be bringing on some awesome guests. So please stay tuned for that. I do know in episode 101, we're going to have Sarah Archer, who is an author. We talk all about her process from when she first got the idea all the way to her book being on shelves. So yeah, look forward to that in the next episode. But yeah, one thing that's been a tradition on the Entertainment Buffet podcast for years is I love me some top tens. Huge fan because I spend more time and like effort and like emotional pain on top tens than I do like probably most of my educational career. Like I'm really, I want to like plant my flag in the sand. Like this is my top 10 of this category. And I take it way too seriously, but it's just what I feel with top tens. It's quite a challenge. This time we are going to be talking about top 10 most underrated movies. So kind of to preface, underrated can mean many different things. These are movies that may have done decently financially. They may have done great critically, but they're movies that for whatever reason, no one really talks about them anymore. And it feels like a lot of these movies, at least for me on my list, is I'm like, have you seen that? And they're like, no. Or have you seen that? Yes, I love that. It's like I love or have no idea of its existence. So these are movies that we want to highlight and just talk about how underrated they are and how hopefully if you guys, the listeners, want to check some of these out. Highly recommended. Josh, before we jump in, do you have some honorable mentions for underrated movies that didn't quite make your list, but you still want to bring them up?
Oh yeah, I did. I cut out the Darjeeling Limited from Wes Anderson, because like I think I'm biased with that movie, because I was kind of like, I saw Fantastic Mr. Fox I think first, but that was like my first like live action Wes Anderson movie, so like that's kind of how I fell in love with him and his style and everything. And so I think that's kind of my honorable mention. But a lot of people don't like that movie. It's kind of one of his weakest ones, a lot of people think, but I like that movie.
Yeah, that's out of his like 10 so movies. I think that and the newest one, and maybe one more. I feel like I've seen most of his filmography, but that's one I never saw because it was usually everyone's like least favorite.
But it's like, I mean, it's the quote unquote worst Wes Anderson, which is like better than most movies. So
True. Any other honorable mentions you want to throw out there?
no, I cheated and put one in, like three in one number. So when I get to it, we'll just go through that. That was probably my honorable mention, was the Darjeeling Limited.
Gotcha. All right. I have a good little list of honorable mentions. The original Tremors, absolute classic.
I don't know if that's underrated.
I think it's underrated. If you really watch it, I think it should be considered like one of the top horror / adventure, action, comedy, everything great movies.
Where does it fall in the list of Kevin Bacon movies?
Towards the top.
Somewhere between Apollo 13 and Footloose.
Top 5 minimum. X-Men First Class. I threw on there. Last Jedi, more so just because the haters out there, if you actually go back and watch it. Captain America Winter Soldier, feel like is a Marvel movie that everyone just forgets. Everyone's just talking about Endgame and, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther. I'm like, Winter Soldier's like the best one, but that's me. I also had Jordan Peele's Us. That movie freaked me out just as much, if not more, than Get Out, but no one has really talked about it since it came out. Another movie I saw later was Hustlers. Wow, I don't know why that wasn't nominated for Best Picture. And then Trial of Chicago 7, I know was nominated for a bunch of stuff this last year, but not enough people have seen it.
Yeah, that really got buried.
I feel like it just fell into the abyss, and that's one thing that's hard about Netflix movies.
They released that at a really bad time. They put that in October, so by the time awards came around in April, like we had this year, no one cared anymore.
Yeah. Another Sorkin one, Steve Jobs with Michael Fassbender, I think is a very
that's a good one.
very underrated, directed by Danny Boyle.
Can I put that on my honorable mentions list now too?
Absolutely, because I will always talk about that Steve Jobs movie. I've seen it like 15 times. And then lastly, I will say Bug's Life, mainly because out of all the Pixar movies, it's always towards the bottom. And I'm like, you guys know, like, this one's still pretty good, right? It's not my like favorite Pixar, but I just think that's one that gets shit for no reason. And it's
because you have the high of Toy Story 1 and the really high of Toy Story 2, and then Bug's Life kind of got forgotten, but it's better than like, the Cars movies.
Better than Woody Allen's
Cars 2. Yeah. Although, Cars 3 is underrated. I'll give that. I watched that for the first time like last year, and it was pretty good.
I have not seen a single Cars movie, but maybe I'll just watch the third.
1 and 3. Just watch 1 and 3. 2 doesn't make any sense. So.
All right. So we're gonna kind of skim over and say really quickly, Josh, go ahead and hit us with your ranking of 10 through 6 for your top 10 most underrated movies.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. So number 10 is Darren Aronofsky's Noah. I feel like no one really appreciated that movie for what it was when it came out. Like, it got a lot of controversy, but then everyone forgot about it as a movie. Everyone's like, Darren Aronofsky, Black Swan, I said Black Widow, Black Swan, and Life of Pi and all that. Everyone forgets it. Number 9, Coen Brothers movie, Burn After Reading, came out right after No Country for Old Men. Really funny, and no one remembers it, and they think of the other ones, and it's up there with like their best.
Yeah.
Number 8, I cheated, and these are 3 movies, and they're all by like famous directors now, and they're all
don't say the 3 Hobbit movies.
No, they're all ones that no one remembers from famous directors now. So you have Prisoners, The Prestige, and Zodiac from, I never can pronounce that guy's name right, but Denis Villeneuve. Thank you. Chris Nolan and David Fincher. At number 7, I went with The New World by Terrence Malick, which is like the Pocahontas movie. No one saw that. No one remembers it. It came out in 2005. Really good movie. And number 6, the Ryan Gosling movie Lars and the Real Girl from 2008, somewhere in there.
Ooh,
Drive. Drive. Yeah.
I've not seen Lars and the Real Girl, but that's been on my list of one to see because looks like a unique performance and premise.
It's really good, and I honestly would have put it higher, but it's been 8-9 years since I've seen it, and so I wanted to rewatch it, didn't get to it, so I had to put it down. I can't talk to it too much.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I actually have a movie that's on my list that you have said. I will say before I give my 10 through 6, a lot of these could have been interchangeable in this whole 10 through 6 position. Like, you could talk to me tomorrow and those could probably flip around, but I just know that these 10 should be on the list. So my number 10 is Edge of Tomorrow. I refuse to call it Live, Die, Repeat, just because I feel like it's movie had so much.
You go with the original title, All You Need Is Kill.
Oh,
That was what that was the original. I
Yeah,
think it was a Blacklist script.
great movie. Trouble with the title. Need to watch it. My number 9 is from Denis Villeneuve, Prisoners. Also, if you can go and catch me on the Defending Your Movie podcast, I'm going to be on an episode of that where Jeremy Meyer and I talk about that for a long time. So go listen to my thoughts on that on Defending Your Movie. Also available on the Entertainment Buffet YouTube channel at some point, coming soon. My number 8 is Warrior. It's with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. Number
and Nick
7.
Nolte. You can't forget Nick Nolte.
Yes, Nick Nolte. It's a movie that's much like the Rock, not the Rock, Rocky movie.
It was like the Rock.
It's
Sean
a
Connery and Nick Cage.
No,
I was like, man, I remember Warrior being.
Oh man, that should be on my list. That's one of the most underrated movies ever. Michael Bay's
actually
like only
side thing. I watched that for the first time like about a month or so ago. Never seen it before, and serendipitously, it was on TV while I was in San Francisco, staying near Alcatraz.
And wasn't it amazing?
It was pretty good. I was like, some of the lines, I was like, these are real lines. These were not censored. This is just Nick Cage saying things.
Yep. I still say my favorite James Bond movie. My number 7 is 50-50. That one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Seth Rogen. I think the director is Jonathan Levine. And then my number 6 is the 2007 remake of 3:10 to Yuma by I'm blanking on his name. He directed
James Mangold.
James Mangold, yes. For me with Westerns, it's very hit or miss. Most of the time miss, but this one, it's like, this is how you do it. Just great acting, cool action for a Western, and incredible direction. So 3:10 to Yuma, yeah, it was my number 6.
Movie.
Yeah, so far Prisoners is on both of our top 10s. That's one that I often, that's the one I tell, it's like people have either seen it and they're like, oh, that's good, or they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
Well, that's why I put it with Prestige and Zodiac, because it's like all kind of the same. You know, everyone's like, oh, I love David Fincher. I'm like, have you seen Zodiac? And they're like, no, it looked boring. And it's like, oh, I love Chris Nolan. Oh, have you seen stuff that's not the Batman movie? It's like, yes, it's Inception and Memento. It's like, have you seen The Prestige? Because it's like one of his best movies. And they're like, what? You mean Dunkirk? And I'm like, no, not Dunkirk.
Yeah, definitely still one of his top like 3 to 5 movies for Nolan, for sure. But yeah, Prisoners, that was one. I have no idea why that wasn't nominated for awards, really, besides
too early. It's all politics. It came out way too early. It came out in September.
Which is, it's crazy how that's early. That's just a few months.
That's early for the awards. You gotta, it doesn't have, it's too dark too. It was way too dark.
It is very dark. I recently rewatched it.
I did too. I was watching his movies before Dune, but I only watched that one. I never got to the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with all of yours. A few of them I have not seen, but now I'm gonna want to see those.
Oh, just you wait.
Maybe not Noah. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Aronofsky, besides The Wrestler. All right. So now we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're gonna get more into detail. Josh, go ahead and hit me with your number 5 most underrated movie.
Okay, when you think of Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, what comes to mind?
Catch Me If You Can.
Saving Private Ryan. No one remembers The Terminal from 2004. I rewatched this recently. It was on Netflix. I was one of those, like, Netflix sends you a little notification like, you might watch The Terminal. And I was like, oh yeah, Terminal.
You're like, you know what, Netflix? I think I might.
I think I might. Not because you told me to, but because I was looking for something to do tonight anyway. And yeah, I rewatched it, and it's a nice little movie. It's a really well done. It's funny. It's uplifting. It's just something you don't see a whole lot, and I feel like it just completely is forgotten, especially for being Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and Catherine Zeta-Jones is in it too.
Yeah. Do you think it's because of like Tom Hanks like doing that accent, or do you think it's the premise? I wonder, like, why did that movie just
I think it's because it's like a romantic comedy, basically. I mean, Spielberg decided to make a sentimental romantic comedy, and he nails it. And it's heartwarming. And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's good romantic comedies. I love a good one. and you know, it's really well done, and I think it's just one of those that it just gets overshadowed by Spielberg's other work.
Yeah, I that's one I have not seen. I think I saw it when it like first came out on DVD. So it was probably like what, 04, 05.
Oh, for
Um
yeah. I
yeah,
looked up my
and
top 5 years, so I can tell you that.
yeah, I remember enjoying it, but yeah, it was not one that blown me away. But yeah, I think it's usually whenever I see a ranking of Spielberg movies, it's like towards the bottom or like the middle at best, usually.
Yeah, I mean, these are not like, you know, none of these are, I mean, I like a lot of these movies, of course, but I don't think they're like the best movies ever made. You know,
Yeah,
this is my list of movies that I think you should watch if you're, you know, that are just, people don't like them for whatever reason, or they're just kind of forgotten.
yeah. I definitely think it's one thing I remember from that was when he did the whole thing where he would like return, what was it, like returning shopping carts for like the quarter or something.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's just it flows really well. I mean, I think it's like an hour 45 or something like that. So it's not even that long. It
Yeah.
flows well. I mean, it's just his character is charming and funny, and you know, there's just a lot to. And oh, it's one of those you watch it again. It's got um, what's the guy who played Cassian Andor in the Star Wars movie? Diego Luna. Is that his name?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, him and Zoe Saldana are both in that movie as like small characters, and it's funny to kind of see that like before they were really big.
Before they could be like the top actor in a movie, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Especially Zoe Saldana. She plays like a TSA agent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to give that a rewatch. My number five is not a romantic comedy, but just a straight up comedy, which feels like these never happen anymore.
Is
You
it The
can just
Hangover?
no. You could check out episode, I think it's 93. I talked with a couple comedians about how like just comedy movies feels like it's a dying thing in Hollywood, unless it's like some big gimmick movie. This one is a recent movie that I feel like you either love it or you haven't seen it, and that is Game Night. Uh, this came out in 2018 from John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. They're like a writer director duo who
Freaks and
I
Geeks, right?
yeah, well,
That's
Jonathan.
what. Yeah, they both from that. I know they didn't write for it, but they were actors on it. I think.
Well, John Francis Daly was like the main Freaks and Geeks guy, where like the actor, whereas Jonathan Goldstein has more so just been a writer that they kind of connected at some point. But yeah, it's Game Night has Rachel McAdams, Jason Bateman, and I just think it is so fucking funny, and also does a lot of dark humor. They do a really interesting, odd character with Jesse Plemons. One of my favorite just little bits is where they're carrying in like groceries, and um, he notices that they have like 3 bags of tortilla chips, and he's like, "Oh, you guys having game night?" And they're like, "No, no, no. This is all for us. It was a deal. It was a 3 for 1." He's like, "That seems highly unprofitable for the Frito-Lay company." You know, like
That's
it's
yeah, yeah. I forgot about that whole. Yeah, he's like the best character in the whole, and like the supporting cast of that movie's crazy too. It's got Lamorne Morris and Billy Magnuson before he was kind of bigger, and Michael C. Hall in it too.
yeah, he has like kind of a cameo towards the end.
Yeah,
Yeah, Chelsea Peretti is in it for a scene.
that's right. I
Um,
forgot about it. I saw it I saw it in theaters, and then I introduced a friend to it, going, "Hey, you never seen this movie? It's actually really funny. It's really underrated." So that's a good pick.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was dying in the theaters, and then I rewatched it. I think it was like a year ago during quarantine. I showed it to a couple people who hadn't seen it, and they're like, "Wow, this is actually good." I'm like, "I know, a straight up comedy that's good. Imagine that." Or like they didn't give away all the good jokes in the trailer, which is just a big issue with comedy movies nowadays. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. What is your fourth most underrated movie?
So my fourth one is a Steve Carell movie with Keira Knightley. Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. I feel like it's a
Ooh.
movie that's completely forgotten, and it's really, really good. I saw it in theaters and instantly loved it. It's just one of those like charming movies, and I said that about The Terminal too. I guess a lot of them are charming here, but it's just one of those movies that just, it's so dark, but it's kind of like a warm hug of a movie, you know?
Yeah,
It's just
I've
it's
only heard good
it's
things. I've seen parts of it, but not the full movie.
it's well done. It's weird for sure, and it's just one of those movies. They don't make movies like that anymore. They don't, with big stars like that, kind of just this slow burn of a. I mean, it's a comedy, but it's also, has very serious moments in it. I mean, the premise is that the world is ending, and Steve Carell's wife, who's actually played by Steve Carell's real wife, just leaves him. And so he's just trying to figure out how to navigate the last 2 weeks before the world ends. And there's a lot of stuff in there where it's just kind of like, yes, this is exactly how people would be when the world is ending. He goes to a party and people are just like, who wants to try heroin? Because why not?
Yeah. Yeah, that you're right though. It's like premises like that I feel like don't quite get greenlit anymore, except for
High
like maybe
concept.
small indie movies. Maybe like we'll try something like that, but they wouldn't have like Keira Knightley and Steve Carell, who's the main character in The Office, which at the time was one of the most popular shows, and like
He'd been off the office for several years at this point.
oh, had he? I thought this movie was older.
2012. So he left the office in 2000. Maybe it was around 2010, 2011. So maybe it wasn't that long, but it felt like it.
Yeah. Damn, another one I need to see. Have
Yeah,
those this episode. Just give me more stuff for my watch list.
right. It falls a little bit into the manic pixie dream girl trope, but I think it tries to correct itself a little bit. But it's one of those, yeah, people need to see it and enjoy it.
Do you know who directed that one? Was it anyone that like went on
Oh,
to Lauren Scafaria?
Hustlers. She made Hustlers to bring everything
Oh, she directed
completely
Hustlers? God
completely
damn.
around. Yeah, and she directed an episode of Succession and several episodes of New Girl, which
Wow.
had Lamorne Morris. So everything's connected.
And apparently she's dating Bo Burnham. Interesting.
Who was
Um
in another movie at one time. That's not on anyone's list, but just plug it. If you haven't seen Promising Young Woman, you should check that one out. That's a good movie.
that's on my watch list for
Can't
sure.
say it's underrated because it was nominated for like literally every Academy Award that could be there.
But there's some movies that are nominated for everything, but then like after the year or two after, people forget about it, like Spotlight. Like
Oh yeah,
no one watches Spotlight anymore.
that was my movie
Um,
of the week a couple weeks ago on Instant Movie Reviews was Spotlight during our True Story movie month.
all right, my number 4 on any other day could have very easily been like my number 1, but I have from 2016 The Nice Guys. This is from Shane Black, my favorite movie that year. Russell Crowe, Ryan Gosling, both hilarious. I feel like Gosling should have been nominated for this movie. It's
This
just,
is before La La Land, right?
yeah, I think the year before, and he just plays such an interesting character that you think is kind of slapsticky and comedy, but then has like a tragic kind of background. And I don't know, I just feel like this is a movie that it's not a full-on comedy, it's more of like a dark comedy, buddy cop story, and it's so well done. And I think that like there's like some twists and turns, and like I don't necessarily want to spoil, but I'll try to vaguely say something. A big thing, if you haven't seen the movie, a big thing that I love is it seems like a certain thing is like, oh, they're going to save the day in this fashion or yada, yada, yada. But in one circumstance, they don't. Like they fail. And so it was like, oh, wow, most movies would have totally saved, that. But they just, yeah, it's something that I think Shane Black did a very unique movie. He's really only directed a few movies or a handful besides like Iron Man 3 and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
He did the Predator reboot, didn't he?
Yeah, it's fine not to mention that one. At least as far as I've heard. I haven't seen it, but The Nice Guys, I just think was such a breath of fresh air, especially because that year I remember it was like the movies were like Finding Dory, Captain America Civil War, and like it was just a bunch of sequels and like franchise movies. And then it was like it felt like one of the only original movies that came out that year. And I think I saw it at least
Yeah.
twice in theaters, maybe 2 or 3 times, because I was like, I want this movie to be financially successful.
That's a good, yeah, I'm gonna end up watching that again. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's God, it is so funny. All right, now we're down to top three.
Top three. All right, so number three is a movie that I was debating this one because I don't know if it's underrated as much as no one's literally ever heard of it. It's from 2017. It's called Band-Aid.
Yep,
Like,
never heard of it.
yeah, so but it's two words. It's not like the bandage. It's Band-Aid. So it's directed and starring directed by and starring Zoe Lister-Jones, if you know who she is. She made that the Coven reboot they just did or whatever that, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about? But it's and was it Adam Pawley is in it too, and Fred Armisen. And it's a movie about it's a movie about a married couple that are having issues, and so they decide to start taking out all of their like arguments in song and form a band around it. And it's just one of those, it's an indie movie for sure, but it's one of those like no one saw it, no one heard of it, but it's like one of my favorite movies. Like it's so just well done. And it's got so much character and heart and stuff to it. And it's, just this really personal story of these two, like trying to like fix their relationship through song. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I mean, it's really, really well done. And I was completely blown away by it. I saw it during quarantine last year. I was looking for something to watch, and I don't know, I encountered that somewhere. And I think someone on Reddit suggested it. They're like, oh, if you haven't seen Band-Aid by Zoe Lister-Jones, you got to check this out. And I saw that comment. I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I was like, this movie is so good. And it just was on no one's radar at all. Like, I mean, and it had a big enough stars in it that you think someone would remember it.
Yeah, I love Adam Pally, and yeah, and there's some other pretty decent names in there. It's all right, another one on the list. Band-Aid. Okay, my number three, Josh, I know you're a fan of this movie too. That is from '08, In Bruges.
That is a good movie.
I was tempted to put Seven Psychopaths on this. I believe it's Martin McDonagh. He's an Irish playwright, and he's currently only written and directed 3 movies: In Bruges, Seven Psychopaths, and then the one that got attention where people are like, oh, who's this guy, which is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I think arguably that In Bruges is his best movie. I know that could be up for debate, but it is.
That's not a debate. It is his best movie.
Well, I don't know. Seven Psychopaths is very underrated to me, but like In Bruges is just his style at best, and also that style very much like I tried to, for my play, How Does It Make You Feel, tried to merge like In Bruges and Clue, like those styles. And yeah, In Bruges is with Colin Farrell and Dominique
Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson, not Dominique Gleeson. And
Ralph Fiennes.
And it's very much, you can tell why Martin McDonagh has like a famous like play background. It's because it's minimal characters, lots of dialogue, but I love that the movie, like 1 minute will like make you potentially cry, like it's just like soul crushing, like with some of the twists, and then like a moment later will just have you cracking up at some of the stupidest shit. And then just the fact that he can juggle that is why he's one of my favorite favorite writers, favorite directors. Like I think he's in both those categories for me. And if you haven't, it's usually on like Netflix or streaming somewhere, so go check out In Bruges. It's one that it's almost made me want to visit Bruges because
I didn't. It's clearly purgatory. Stay away from that place.
I don't know. I think was it, I don't remember if it was you that you're like, oh, you should really check out In Bruges, because I saw Seven Psychopaths first from him, and I think, yeah, it was either you or someone in college was like, you should really check out In Bruges, and I'm like, all right, fine, it's on Netflix, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I showed that movie to like everyone I could back in college because before Seven Psychopaths came out, because we went to I went to a screening of that actually, and Martin McDonagh was there, so I met him
Oh
very
wow.
briefly. It was the, like when I say met, like I literally mean met him. Like it's one of those, you know, they had so many like people stop by to promote, but I was leaving the theater and I had forgot something, and we went back, and he was standing outside the theater waiting for his car,
Nice.
and so I just came up to him and just talked to him for a second. Very nice guy. So
Yeah, I seriously, I really hope, especially after Three Billboards getting all this award attention,
and some
like,
unwanted attention that for stuff.
well, yeah,
Had some
unfortunately,
controversies with that one.
some controversies that I'm sorry, guys, like I'll argue the controversies because I don't know. It's I definitely just want to see what else he has to say in some other premise, because he always does original stories, whether it's from his plays or his movies. He does just original stories. Sure, some things can be, you know, swayed towards problematic, but he also just deals with a lot of dark subjects, and that makes people uncomfortable. So yeah, In Bruges, that's my number 3. Could have easily also been my number 1.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, so Josh, now we're down to our final 2.
Okay, so you're gonna think my final two are definitely like out of left field picks, but we're gonna go with it. So number 2 is actually an Alfred Hitchcock movie from 1943 called Shadow of a Doubt. I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it.
I have not
it
seen it.
was it was everyone thinks of like Rear Window, you know, Psycho, The Birds and stuff, but Shadow of a Doubt was about I think she's supposed to be a teenage or something, this girl named Charlie who goes to visit her uncle comes to stay with her, also named Charlie because that's who she's named after, and it turns out that her uncle's like a serial killer. And so it's this whole like, you know, kind of thing, is psychological movie where she's trying to figure out like, is her uncle this murderer, and what's she going to do when she finds out? And the uncle's trying to get on to her and everything about what's, you know, does she know his secret that he's been murdering all these women back in, I can't remember where it was. I haven't seen the movie in a while, to be full disclosure, but I put it on number 2 because I feel like no one has heard of it or remembers this movie. And it's really, really, I mean, it's Alfred Hitchcock, so it's super well done. And I, you know, debated between that and like Rope, but people know Rope and like the gimmick, but no one's heard of Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah, I've even seen Rope because of the gimmick, but which I think Rope is a little overrated in some sense.
That's why I didn't put Rope on there. And the same thing with like Rear Window and Vertigo. Well, Vertigo would have been a good one. But yes,
I will debate Vertigo, but yeah, no, that Shadow of the Doubt, that premise just sounds, you know, like what we've talked about. So many franchises nowadays, like you can't have like unique premises like that anymore.
no, and no one remembers the movie, and I keep saying that. That's like what my mantra for underrated picks is like, if you know, I mean, it's a famous director. It's not just like an obscure movie out of nowhere, but no one remembers it. And I think it's actually better than some of his more famous work.
Definitely. I'm sure it's better than Vertigo. I think that's his most overrated piece.
We'll debate the merits of Vertigo on a different episode.
Sure. I bet you're going to say like, oh, visually this, visually that.
I gotta rewatch it again. I gotta go visit it again.
I'm going to say that's stupid premise and the stupid ending.
I liked it.
I think North by Northwest is one of my favorite Tarantino, or not Tarantino, Hitchcock with, probably Rear Window, but Shadow of a Doubt sounds interesting. And
yeah, it is.
That's probably one of those, like they'll sell like a Hitchcock, like 8-pack or something. It's like probably in one of those.
I got it on the Blu-ray set, you know, when that was a thing.
As we're on to my number 2, so I cheated on this one and did like a tie for 2, but I'll explain why. This is, out of all my movies, the most seen probably and most known, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it first, and then I'll explain more. Back to the Future's Part 2 and 3. These ones I lumped them together because they were filmed back to back. And yeah, I just think that obviously Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies of all time. A lot of people, it's either their favorite or it's like their top 5, top 10. It just, much like a lot of Spielberg movies, it just hits, as they say, like all the quadrants. It's funny, it's got sci-fi.
Zemeckis though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Zemeckis
Bob
directed
Zemeckis.
it. And I just feel like people saw the second or third one when they were like young, and it wasn't as good as the original, and therefore they just dismiss it. And I don't know. I think that the second and third have it's hard to follow up a movie that is considered one of the best of all time, and I think they tried their best. Like what I like about the second one is they have a section where they go to the future and they play around with that, but then they go back and they have to like interact with stuff from the first movie, and there's like doubles of characters and shenanigans. And I don't know. I just feel like 2 especially gets a lot of shit. But I'm a proud fan of 2. Got my hoverboard. It just doesn't work on water. And then the third one, it can be campy with Doc's like love story, but like as far as like westerns go, I still think better than a lot of westerns.
It's like it's very clearly just like, hey, you know what we should do? A Western. How do we
Yeah.
get that funded?
Well,
Just Back to the Future 3.
yeah, I
Perfect.
mean, because think about it, like that's probably what most Americans think of, like if they had a time machine, is like going to the future, or like you want to be in the old west. And the third one is definitely the weakest one, but I think it wraps up things nicely. And opposed to so many franchises, it like did try to like wrap up the story and be like, this is done now. It left it open. It could continue, and like people for years have still been like, is there going to be a fourth one? Are they going to reboot it? But it's like, no, this is just a trilogy, 1, 2, 3, and that should be it. So yeah, I think if anyone is doubting 2 and 3 being fun, go rewatch them. I'm sure you'll enjoy them a lot more than, plenty of movies that come out nowadays.
See, I disagree. I think 3's better than 2.
Oh,
I think two loses its charm a little bit. It gets too dark and it just doesn't know what it wants to do, and then
when
3 kind of redeems it.
well, you don't like when his dad is dead in the future, or like
Yeah, it
the
gets so
alternate.
dark and just so like the
Well, that's
alternate
another thing
future
too.
just
The
gets
the Biff with like
it gets a little too much, and and then the cliffhanger ending, of course, and but yeah, 3 kind of redeems it with I liked 3. Yeah, I mean that's a good pick, and I heard that I think either Zemeckis or the other Bob Gale, they own the rights to Back to the Future. Like when they made the movies, they made sure that they were the rights holders, so no one can
oh
make a sequel to it, and that's why there's never been another sequel or anything. Is because believe me, I mean they're rebooting Ghosts. How many times we've already had like 2 Ghostbusters in the last like 5 years? I mean
yeah.
like they're gonna reboot everything they can, and so Back to the Future is one that until they die will probably be okay.
Yeah, well, like that's one, like if anything, like, and I think they tried. It's like it maybe would have worked with like, I don't know, an animated series or something, but like it's not going to work as without that cast, because that's one thing too. Besides Crispin Glover, the cast for all 3 movies like stay the same.
No,
Leah.
the Jenny's different.
Oh well,
Or
she's
is that her name? Jennifer? What is her name?
Jennifer, but she's
Jennifer.
yeah,
She's in
she
Forrest Gump.
does she does change, but she is.
It's a totally different woman for the 2 and 3.
But I'm just saying she's a minor character. I'm saying like the top leads, like Doc, Marty, Leah Thompson, Thomas F.
Biff,
Wilson for Biff. Like they're in all of them, playing multiple ages and
Flea.
years.
Never forget Flea's in the movie. I think he's only in 2 and 3 though.
Yeah, so Back to the Future Part 2 and 3, I say check them out again. And yeah, I wonder how many movies at that time did what they did, where it's like they filmed the sequels back to back, like at the same time, opposed to, I don't know, nowadays where it's like they may wait years before doing the sequel again.
See Dune.
Yeah. All right, Josh, we're down to your final most underrated movie that yeah.
So I feel like with your picks, I should have picked something different because like I totally misread your audience or something. But my number one pick is from 1973. No, I think it's actually 74. I made a mistake. 1974. Francis Ford Coppola, The Conversation with Gene Hackman. It came out the same year as The Godfather Part 2. It actually competed against The Godfather Part 2 at the Oscars and lost. So Coppola was nominated against himself. But it's just one of those, it really got overshadowed by The Godfather and everything then. But it's like, you ever see Enemy of the State with Will Smith and Gene Hackman?
No.
So it's like kind of like The Rock, where it's like a, semi sequel to The Conversation. Like Gene Hackman might be the same character between both movies, but he's a I think it's NSA or whatever it was at the time, agent who listens in on people's conversations and kind of does some, he's like a private contractor, does some spy work, and then he starts thinking he's being spied on. And starts slowly descending into madness, believing that all these people are listening to him all the time and that all his secrets are going to come out. And it's a very slow burn of a movie, but the ending stays with you forever. And it's been referenced in tons of stuff. Better Call Saul is a big example of, taking stuff from The Conversation. And I put it as my number one because it's such a good movie. It was nominated for so many things. It's one of Gene Hackman's best performances. And no one remembers it because it was overshadowed by The Godfather Part 2 when that came out.
Yeah, no, I love that pick, especially if it's one that like was not only nominated, but it is, it was nominated against another movie that it just unfortunately had like no chance against.
But it's so funny that it's the same director too. I mean, the same year. It's like
if they just would have released it the following year, and then he could have got nominated for that.
It's like the Aaron Brockovich. What was it Traffic?
Traffic, both came out in 2000.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah, and both good movies. And Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, no, I'll admit I obviously don't have really any old movies on my list, but that's usually because unless I've been recommended an old movie for a certain reason, I haven't taken a look, and I didn't have, as many chances growing up to see classic movies. But yeah, no, that sounds.
I misread your audience here.
Well, no, it's not the audience factor.
They can write me letters about why did you pick movies from 1943 and 1974 as your.
They both sound good though. They actually, it'd be different if you picked one. I'm like, it doesn't sound that great, but like they both sound, especially Shadow of a Doubt. This too, I'm curious if it's one of Hackman's best performances. Cause also like everyone talks about Godfather 1 and 2. I feel like no one talks about almost any other Coppola movie besides
Apocalypse Now.
I was going to say Apocalypse Now, like those three, and then what I want to check that out. I hope that that's streaming somewhere. See, like obscure movies like that, I feel like should just be available streaming somewhere.
Is this the time I get to plug Criterion and tell you to get the Criterion streaming service?
All right. So my number one definitely wouldn't be on the Criterion collection. Maybe years from now.
Real quick, The Conversation is on Hulu for those who are interested.
Nice.
It is available on Hulu.
Nice. So this, I've probably talked about this on the podcast before. I love this director. Ryan Johnson's 2012 movie Looper is my number one. Looper, I think, is just such a quality, like original story movie that people enjoyed. It was like on a lot of top 10 lists, wasn't nominated, but was still like a lot of critics top 10 lists for the year. And then no one ever talked about it again. It just disappeared into the ether. And I feel like I'm the one always telling people to watch Looper, because
his first three movies are completely forgotten.
Yeah, like
Brothers Bloom and Looper.
Yeah. I haven't seen Brick, but yeah, Brothers Bloom also on a rewatch was very enjoyable. I think that Looper, people should really watch because it's like this is the guy that they allowed to do a Star Wars movie. And I don't want to say it's just because of Looper. It's obviously because like his writing and directing ability. But I'm sure the people at Lucasfilm had heard of Looper and seen it. You know.
I don't know. I mean, like some of the picks they had for director, but I mean, Rian Johnson was by far above and beyond all the other directors that they picked for making a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And he's one of the few that actually succeeded in making a Star Wars movie. The rest seem to start and stop and never get anywhere.
Yeah. So I think, especially if you enjoyed like Knives Out, it's not as like fun as that because that's like a murder
They're
mystery.
very different movies.
They're very different, but like Looper, I think gives a very good performance from Bruce Willis, which like
which is a weird sentence to say.
Which is weird because like he doesn't really give performances, but there's like a scene where he has to like get very emotional, and I'm like, hey, I didn't know Bruce had that in him, you know, like and Joseph Gordon-Levitt does a pretty good young Bruce Willis impression and the makeup.
Emily Blunt's in it too. She does a really good job.
Emily Blunt is good. What I enjoyed about the movie, and you can watch the trailer, is if you watch the trailer, and this is actually something I've noticed for a lot of Rian Johnson movies. So I don't know if it's someone in his like team or the marketing department, he convinces them, but the movie is the gimmick, like a younger Bruce Willis, like a younger self has to kill his older self. Like that's what loopers do. And it's like, it looks like it's just going to be an action movie, but it's totally not that, where everything they show in the trailer is probably within the first 15-20 minutes of the movie. It feels like they don't really show a lot. And then all of a sudden, like halfway through the movie, there's this whole other subplot and character that you had no idea is not in the trailer at all. And so it just felt so fresh because I'm like, I didn't think it would go in this direction at all. And hopefully is a movie that's not going to have any sequels. Like it's just a one and done story. Looper. I love it. I'm also a huge fan of time travel stuff. So I think he handled it well. And it's also one that, I think it's only like an hour 45 or something, like hour 50. Like it goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I forgot about Looper. So I guess that I watched it like within the last couple of years too, but it is, I think it's more well known than Brick or Brothers Bloom, but not as well hated as The Last Jedi or which I love. Like that is by far like one of the best Star Wars movies.
Oh, but absolutely agree. That's why
it's just everyone. I'm not gonna get into it. We're not gonna get into Star Wars.
Not gonna get into it.
I've been telling everyone I can't do it anymore. It's
Star Wars.
I have to let it go.
It's just a toxic fandom of all the toxic fandoms, and it's like, I'm sorry, you're incorrect. Last Jedi is a good movie. There are some flaws, just like all of the Star Wars movies, but I think that Rian Johnson is one of those directors, especially so far, that like you look at his career and like every one of his movies feel unique and original. And like Knives Out was one of my favorites, and I was so glad that got like attention and, did well enough to where he's going to be doing 2 sequels with that detective character, Benoit Blanc. And
Daniel Craig needs some work now, I guess.
Got a massive Netflix deal.
Like $400 million, which is crazy. But hey, you know what? I mean, I'll watch it. I mean, if he's got ideas for it, go for it.
Yeah.
Do you think he's ever going to have a Star Wars trilogy, or do you think that was canceled quietly? We're just never going to talk about it again.
Oh, I'm sure it was canceled quietly, or maybe it'll happen like later. Like they'll hopefully try to have people forget about Last Jedi, and then he'll be like, hey, by the way, I don't know. Honestly, I would prefer he work on movies like Knives Out or Looper, like just original stories, or like you said, if he has an idea for something he wants to sequelize of his own work, opposed to juggling another property, where you could tell even in the interviews how much he loved that property, but people would just shit on that movie for no reason.
If you're looking for something kind of good to watch too, check out The Director and the Jedi. I think it's in the bonus features of The Last Jedi on Disney Plus. It's like a feature-length documentary about the making of The Last Jedi.
Oh,
And it's really, really well done. It's one of the better, making of docs I've seen. I mean, it really kind of goes into Rian Johnson's process and, what went into the movie, and just, I mean, amazing some of the stuff that was not actual like CG, and just like, you can just feel his love of the franchise, and not rehashing it, of going, I want to push this in a direction that excites me. And,
but yeah, also feels very like, I don't want to say similar to Empire Strikes Back, but it's like I can see the comparisons, but then also I see where he tried to do new things and people are like, new? But also I don't want you to copy like Force Awakens did. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what you want then.
it's very much like winking nods at Empire, but there's the walkers and all that stuff, but they never actually do the same thing. Where, I mean, if I describe to you vaguely the plot of the Force Awakens versus
New Hope.
the original Star Wars, it'd be like, wait, which one are you talking about right now?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was some underrated movies. Before we go down too deep in the rabbit hole of Rian Johnson,
We're done with Star Wars.
Jedi.
I promised my anger group that I would stop talking about Star Wars before we get to the unforgivable episode 9.
Yeah, I last thing I'll say on Star Wars, and then we can move on, is like, and I finally heard it on a podcast, someone else say it, and I'm like, all right, great. I'm not the only one with this thought. Is like, they just need to try other genres in the Star Wars universe. Like, make a horror movie in the Star Wars universe. Make like a straight up comedy, whatever you got to do, just try different things in that universe. People will already go because it's Star Wars, but then you don't need to have like $300 million sci-fi epics. You can just do stuff like Mandalorian with the and it's on a giant TV screen.
Yeah.
But real quick, before we wrap up here, Josh, if you want to go ahead and read your 10 again, your 10 through 1, to recap.
My 10 through 1, number 10 is Noah. Number 9 is Burn After Reading. Number 8 is Prisoners of the Prestige and Zodiac. And for those who weren't listening and tuned in just to this part of the podcast, those are 3 separate movies. Number 7 is The New World. Number 6 is Lars and the Real Girl. Number 5 is The Terminal. Number 4, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. Number 3, Band Aid. Number 2, Shadow of a Doubt. And number 1, The Conversation.
Nice. My number 10 was Edge of Tomorrow. Number 9 was Prisoners. Also, number 8 was Warrior. 7 was 50-50. 6 was 3:10 to Yuma, the 2007 version by James Mangold. Number 5 is Game Night. Number 4 is The Nice Guys. Number 3 is In Bruges. Number 2 is a tie between Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3. And then my number 1 is Looper. So
you had 2 Joseph Gordon-Levitt movies on there?
I did. 50-50 is very underrated. I that was my favorite movie of 2011. Like,
yeah, I remember that. That was a good one. I completely forgot about that movie.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people did. And the only connecting tissue for both the lists is Prisoners.
That's true. And Ryan Gosling. We both have Ryan Gosling on there.
Oh, well, of course. Yeah, so I guess out of all these movies you guys should check out if you haven't seen them, probably one of the top ones is Prisoners, because it made both of our top 10s. Yeah, and like I said,
maybe be in a good mood before you watch it.
Well, I talk all about that, like I said, on the Defending Your Movie podcast. That's an episode coming out where we talk about Prisoners, because Denis Villeneuve did that one. He also did Sicario, Arrival, Enemy, Blade
Runner 2049.
Blade Runner 2049. If you look at all those movies, and this is actually like a mini little thought on Dune, is they're all serious movies. Like, they're usually
very serious,
large. They're usually large scale in some sense, or at least dramatic, and good performances. Sometimes they're high concept, but it's just the fact that you won't see any Marvel quips in those ones.
Which is probably good, because Marvel has a tendency to ruin emotional moments with quips.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that it's I could totally understand people not being a fan of like super serious movies like that. So like just know going in, it's dark, it's brutal, and it is, you know, it's serious. It's
It's a very, yeah, all of them are very serious movies. Oh, that's a good underrated or honorable mention. A Serious Man by the Coen brothers. You gotta check that one out too. That's a good one.
I did not see that one.
No
All
one
right.
remembers their like mid-thousands stuff. Like after like No Country for Old Men, they made like really good movies and no one remembers them.
Well, but like I don't know. I feel like Coens have kind of like what have they been up to? Like the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Like what have they?
They have well, Ethan Coen is no longer making movies. So they broke up. The Coen brothers broke up.
What?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
He just wants to make plays or something now. So Joel Coen has The Tragedy of Macbeth coming out in December, and I think Apple TV Plus in January is an A24 release. But it's
Oh,
Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth, and then Denzel is Macbeth. And
wow.
like it looks fantastic, and I heard it's just phenomenal from some of the festivals it's played in. So the Coen brother does have a movie coming out.
Hmm. Wow. Does that mean the one Cohen, his last movie is going to be the Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
I think he'll come back. He just says he's not interested in making movies right now.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I hope you don't go out on that note. Like,
Hey, you know what? I'll give it to him because, like, I mean, at least that's a legitimate, like, hey, I'm gonna go, make some plays while you go make these artsy Macbeth movies versus like the Wachowski sisters who were like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to do another Matrix. It was like, all I want to do is another Matrix.
We'll see how Matrix 4 is in like a month now. But yeah, guys, that was our top 10 most underrated movies. Yeah, it's I I feel like I was thinking going into this, I'm like, oh, he's probably gonna name a good amount I've seen, and then fucking pulls out like good half, at least half of them I haven't seen, some of
I
which
want
I
some
haven't even
obscure
heard of.
titles for sure.
um but yeah, so please comment or share if you have some underrated movies that we did not discuss that you would put on your top 10 list if you made one. If you made a top 10 list, I'd love to see it. Add more stuff to my watch list. But yeah, Josh, where can you want to share where you can be found on social medias?
You can find me at J. Scott Sibley on most social media platforms. You can also find Deft Pictures on that's DEFT on most social media platforms. And we, as I said, we're gearing up for the release of our new short film, The Wraith, coming out a couple months, hopefully. We'll see. Festivals, all that good stuff. But look for some behind the scenes stuff with that. And Instant Movie Reviews, which is part of Deft Pictures and the whole thing, and I host and produce. And you can find that same places. Just look for Instant Movie Reviews and look for my face.
Yeah, and please check out all entertainment buffet stuff, especially the YouTube. Support us there. Seriously, if you just watch some of the videos, we get ad money from YouTube, and that goes to all the artists who created the various content on there. The Entertainment Buffet podcast is available on the YouTube page, on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, whatever is easiest for you. We're on most platforms. But yeah, thanks you for listening. I hope to hear some other lists of underrated movies because I always love recommendations. But and thanks for coming on, Josh.
Thanks for having me.